It's DJ EFN, one half of the Drink Champs, and I was just on the Ryan Holtz podcast.
Everyone, welcome to another episode of the Ryan Holtz Show podcast, voted #1 Black hosted podcast in Canada, the show that helps you upgrade your life personally and professionally. Our next guest is an absolute banger. It's interesting. Everybody knows him as DJ EFN, but I thought, what the hell is this guy's name? It's Eric Fernando Narciandi. My man, welcome to the show.
What's good? What's good?
What's good? So listen, if you are not aware who DJ EFN is,
I would say number 2.
Crazy Hoods, and also one half of an amazing podcast show called Drink Champs. My first question to you, man, is how's your day going? I know you're coming off the business call. What's a normal day look like for DJ EFN in 2022 so far?
These days, I be on daddy duty a lot. That's what a normal day is for me. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and in the morning, I take the daddy duties with the baby, and I be one hand daddy duty, the other hand is on the phones and answering emails, and that's what my mornings are usually like. And then in the afternoon, I hit the office in the studios where I'm at right now and keep working.
I love that, man. You know what? And 1-year-old, congratulations, by the way. How many kids do you have in total? Two. I have a daughter. She's 3, and my son's 1. So I have a 2-year-old queen and a 5-year-old king. So when I tell you I know what you're doing, we're right one and the same. My wife and I, we both operate a business, and thank God for a calendar, because we said early on, you know, we don't want to put our children in childcare. So literally, you know, my hand could be in like a diaper and reaching for everything I need to do, and then hop on and chat with you. And that's true life.
I take pride in changing diapers, man. It's the one job that I know I'm doing right.
So let me ask you this. So how old is your oldest? Sorry?
She's 3. She's going to be 4 in May.
So how has this impacted the way you calibrate and navigate your life since having children as a dad? I think it's so important.
It's changed everything, completely everything. I thought of having children, you know, since I was young. I've always wanted to have kids, but I held off because I wanted to you know, pursue my career and work and make sure that the time was right. I found out that it's never the right time, and it's always the right time to have kids, you know. But, you know, when my daughter was born, it was early on when Drink Champs started really taking off. And I was doing my documentary films where I travel the world doing that. And so it made it rough because I really wanted to be present, and I am present with my kids. And so it did change. It changed my focus in a lot of ways, and, you know, but it invigorated a lot of my other focus in other things, you know, to make sure that I create a living for the family that's well worth it all.
No, I'm a business person too. I come from the business battlefield, and it's interesting, you know. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, but I think about it, and I'm, you know, there's that saying it always rings true, is, you know, success without soulfulness is truly an empty victory. And I always say to myself, what would my kids say about their dad? You know, success, all that. But, you know, I have a lot of people I've literally came in contact with that their kids can't stand them. And they got all the money in the world, you know, they're loaded, they're all this. And they're like, my dad, my mom, they were not there for me. And it breaks my heart, because as a father, you know, I always say in my life, father is number 1. Everything else around that in my life revolves around that. To me, if I'm doing good at that, everything else can be negotiated at some point. Do you feel that way?
Absolutely. I mean, to me, wealth doesn't equal money. Wealth is happiness, your family being well, having a roof over their heads, being able to do things for them and give them the things that they need, you know, and that doesn't necessarily equal lots of money. You know, I know a lot of people that do it with almost no money. And, you know, everybody wants to acquire money, but that's not what wealth is. And 100%. I come from a broken home where my father wasn't really around. And, you know, that's definitely a chip on my shoulder where I'm, you know, my plan is to never be that for my children. I want to be there all the time for them.
Now, let me ask you that, too, because I was raised by a single mom, and I always go back to little increments. Like the wall behind me, I call it the I am enough wall. It's a wall that, for me, has mementos on there. Whenever you start doubting yourself, or kind of, you know, maybe your mindset goes into a little bit of that victimhood, you know, it's something that always brings me back. So I have a football helmet because, for me, My dad growing up was football coaches, was teachers. And I will never forget the feeling I had when you'd get awards and you'd be looking out and, every other kid's parents are there, the dad's there throwing the ball, all this. And you just had nothing. And that feeling alone, I don't know if you're like this, but for me, I need to create fail-safe situations in my life that literally piss me off because I do my best work when I get extremely motivated. I always say when you're thinking, listening, and willing to take action, you're dangerous. And so for me, there's certain moments that I purposely go back to in my life to piss me off. For you, how did you say, hey, I come from a broken home. I didn't have my dad. Now you're a father. How have you transitioned some of that emotion into power, so to speak?
Yeah, well, I mean, what you said, I did that all my life. And it's part of the reason why my company is called Crazy Hood Production. That's where the crazy part is. And our slogan is "Who's crazy?" And it's really rhetorical. It's and it was because I was always tapping into my crazy as a source of energy. Early on, it was hard to control it, and then when I was able to harness it, then it worked. It worked out better. But the way that transformed itself with my children is that I realized that energy has to be purely in just making sure that the family is stable, that I create a home for the family, and that's where I kind of like put that energy in. I really don't tap into it like I used to. There's a comfort in knowing that it's there.
Yes.
And there's a comfort in knowing that maybe you could even kind of control it. It probably can't really control it, to be honest with you. But the thought of saying, okay, I have this energy in me that if need be, it needs to come out. Maybe that's the protective father and husband, or maybe, the whatever it is that it needs to happen, but it's there. But I don't necessarily release it like I used to.
I like that. It's interesting. I think that human beings that, especially when you come from a lot of greatness, when you really derive the emotions psychologically. I like to study brains for a living because I feel like once you understand a human's brain, you can really start doing big things in the world. But when we derive greatness, especially when you study some of the best in the world in all industries, a lot of it is derived from pain and suffering. And so when you're surviving, I always say, somebody who's surviving, like, mad respect, I've been there, and you're just trying to get through the day, so to speak. You're just trying to can we get to tomorrow? Right. But once that person can pull themselves out of survival mode into this situation where they're like, okay, I got a little bit of calm happening in my life. To me, that's when somebody gets dangerous, because that's when you can start thinking, strategizing, and figuring out how you want to navigate. And with what's going on in the world with the pandemic, you see, to apply force, so to speak, from like a higher power, you really see that, people try to keep people in a place of survival because you don't necessarily do your best work then. You don't have the state of calm to think. For you, coming from where you come from, did you feel at a certain part of your life that, okay, I'm not just surviving anymore, I'm kind of thriving, I'm kind of on the offense? Was there a moment where you kind of said, all right, this is different, it's a little different now?
There is, but I don't like to live in that space because I also have had, and anybody that's, I think in any industry, to be honest with you, anybody that's an entrepreneur or anything can understand that there's so many ups and downs. Life is like an ocean, and with the waves, and it crashes, it goes up, it goes down, and so I don't like to get too comfortable because I've been on the other side of when the crash happens.
Oof. Yes.
And so that's what I'm trying to say is, like, I always feel like I suppress the crazy in me, but know it's there because my goal is to maintain a stability for my family. Now, when I didn't have a family, I let it loose because it didn't matter. I'll take whatever comes. I'll hit the ground. I'll crash all the way, but then I'll come back up and crash again. Yeah. No fear, but I need to have a little bit of that fear to maintain the stability for the family. So yeah, I definitely understand. And to backtrack a little bit, when you mentioned when like your father figures were the coaches and all that, that's what hip hop music became for me. It became my surrogate father. And obviously, I have to give props to my mom because she instilled enough in me that I took mostly, not everything, but mostly the good things that I can get out of hip hop music and out of the lyrics to apply it what I didn't have coming from my father. you know, and so it helped me navigate in a time when I was a young man needing that male figure in my life.
It's so interesting too, because I watch when you're interviewing people, and you and your cohort Nori are very different personalities in my opinion. He's crazy and make some noise. Like I was gonna have the air horns going on today and throwing alcohol in the air, but I thought, and I look at you, and you're always the voice of reason in the conversation. Like, he's going on a tangent, and then you're like, but wait a second, hold on. Let's dive deeper on this. You're an excellent listener. Like, you can really tell you're listening to what the person's saying. Is that something you've always been? Because when you say who's crazy, how did you go from, hey, I got the crazy, to being this very like chill, hey, I'm taking it all in and I'm able to listen and stay very grounded?
I mean, I understood what was needed in the dynamic for Drink Champs to survive. Two Noris Drink Champs would not be here today.
Clutch.
So
huge.
So I needed to, and to me, I don't work from, at least I try not to work from a place of ego, and where I need to insert myself, where I need to do certain things. I'm, and I am a student of, I really love the culture, and I'm a student of the culture. So when we have people, I want to hear their stories and give my input when I feel that I want to give my input, when I think that it's needed. But again, I feel like it's perfect, because if there were two Noris there, I guarantee you there would be no Drink Champs today. and so, but if you were to hang out with me and my friends, and my girl can attest to this, you're hanging out with, I'm Cuban, Colombians, Jamaicans, Haitians. We're from South Florida. We're drinking, and we're all talking crazy and talking over each other. And you'll see me acting the way, that I probably don't act on Drink Champs behind closed doors with my friends,
Yeah. I find that interesting how you're basically saying, look, I know there's a time and a place to be certain things, not all things, so to speak.
Right.
How have you calibrated yourself that way? I find it interesting because I always say, hey, if you see a show, it's like having, we have guests on the show, and it's like, what questions you want to ask them? I never ever get questions pre-done. I study them. I watch so much video on you, but I don't like the whole Q&A thing. But what I find more fascinating is, what can I figure out about this person that I can't find on Google? How can I get to know DJ EFN on a level that's not on his Instagram? And so when I look at the success that you guys have had at Drink Champs, I go back to the architecture of it, the blueprint, how you guys have built it. And one key thing you just said was, two Noris is not going to make that show propel the way it has. How did you know that going forward? Was that something you and him both stepped into saying, or is it something you just kind of gravitated to as you went through it?
Yeah, no, we definitely didn't go into it saying that. We were already working a lot together. We just had a lot of synergy in the things that we were doing, and we complemented each other, and we just started to eventually do Drink Champs. I don't know if you've heard the Drink Champs story. I've said it.
I have, yeah.
And so when we finally started, it just, this is what it is. It's, I'm very lucky to have someone like Nori on the show with me, who's a legend in his own right. He's a legend, and having the personality he has, because that's a big driving force of the show. And a lot of the weight of the conversation is on him, but I am that balance to the show. But
he likes that. He likes that though. That guy, he likes to talk.
Of course.
He loves it. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. Two Noris wouldn't make Drink Champs. You know what I'm saying? So, that's so, but that's it. We didn't go into it premeditated that this is the way it's going to go down. But again, I don't operate from a place of ego, or at least I try not to. I'm gonna, we're all human. But of course, I realized that's not what I'm trying to do. In fact, if it was up to me, I probably wouldn't even be on camera, to be honest with you. I'm a DJ. I play the back role. I like to manage artists. I like to produce artists. I like to do everything behind the scenes. But sometimes, to get things done right, to get things done efficiently, you have to insert yourself in them. And so I'm basically a placeholder for my interests.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. But to me, that's so, that's deep, because I think about it, right? Like, you are a DJ. And what I love about your story and what you guys have done, because the business person in me loves this, is that you said, well, let's take the culture and not just be like a DJ, but let's create a media entity around our passion. And so you guys have a show that's a media entity. I mean, man, you know, advertisers and owning your own content and all this stuff.
Right.
And I love that. A lot of people say, hey, what's going, like COVID and the pandemic and all that. I always say, man, I'm like, there's opportunities, you know, inch by inch, life's a cinch, yard by yard, life is hard. But when you look in those little inch moments, there's opportunity. So for you, is that something, if you're to go previous to Drink Champs, that you said, hey, I would love to have a show that brings on some of the, you know, cultural icons that I look up to? Is that something you had as a game plan, or is that something that presented itself?
It was like a game plan without speaking about it. Nori was the one that said legends only, which in all honesty, you know, our fans took that to heart. So whenever we have someone that they don't think is a legend, we hear about it. For me, it wasn't so much legends only. For me, it's home of legends, which is different. Home to the legends, meaning I think it's the legend is going to benefit more if we have an array of guests with all kinds of different audiences, so that when that legend and that pioneer comes on the show, who may have not been, you know, on social media as of yet, you know, or was just starting to get their traction there, and they don't have that audience, they benefit from all these different people that we have on the show. So my point of view, and I think Nori means it, it's just sometimes he'll say things the way he says them, is really that we like to think of ourselves as a safe place and a home for the legends and the pioneers, that they don't have to be on a press run, they don't have to have a new project out, they just need to be revered in the culture for us to want to have them on and have some kind of a legacy. But we're not excluding a newer artist or an actor or a comedian, because to me, it's always going to be hip hop, regardless of the guest, because of me and Nori. We are hip hop. You are on a hip hop show. Therefore, this whole thing is hip hop.
You know, it's interesting because I feel like there's two factors to the success of your show. One is alcohol. I mean, come on now, right? You're getting everybody to chill out.
That's the third host.
that media training's getting a little bit, you know, fuzzy because of the cognac or whatever you're drinking. But the second thing is that you said it earlier, you created a safe space to have unsafe conversations. And that to me is like the art of what you guys are doing. What people are listening to the show because we have a lot of business people, but a lot of people like hip hop and entertainment. What would you say to somebody that says, because I know you talk on the subject of, you know, successful podcasts and all that. What would you say to somebody that says, yo, DJ EFN, you guys got your niche. You're in the hip hop scene. That wasn't hard to pick. You wanted to do a hip hop show. What would you say to up and coming podcast hosts or people that want to create their own show? Should they pick a niche? Because everybody says, you know, try to go a little bit more thorough. You're competing with 2 million plus podcasts in the world. Celebrities are getting on board now because they're at home doing whatever, right?
Right.
What would you say to somebody that's thinking about creating a show at this point?
I would say create it without the idea that, or putting the pressure on yourself that it has to be an immediate success. Drink Champs was an anomaly. We were lucky. We caught lightning in a bottle. We came at the perfect timing for a hip hop show, because hip hop wasn't really doing this that much. There was a couple, in respect to all the hip hop podcast pioneers, but it didn't go mainstream. It wasn't popular. It wasn't cool. It was considered like only nerds listen to podcasts. You know, that's what people in hip hop were thinking.
So true.
You know, you could barely tell some guys in hip hop to look at emails. So
that's so true. It's
true.
So true. It's so true.
So when we came on, I remember having our first year of guests, and all of our guests were like, I don't know what this is, but I'll do it because it's you guys, you know, because it's Nori. But I don't, and now all of them have their own shows, you know.
Yes.
So I would just say, you know, finding your niche is beautiful if you can figure it out. But more so, to me personally, everything is consistency. Go in, create a plan for yourself, give yourself a realistic time frame to see if it works, or if you have to pivot, you know, and do it from the heart because you love it. Speak in your own voice. Don't try to be somebody else. A lot of people do media and pick up another person's personality, or they have another persona, unless maybe that's your thing. You're creating a persona, and that's some people's thing.
No.
But do it consistently. Allow it to you know, develop itself, and then, you know, and start just looking at it in time. Like, okay, 6 months, 3 months from now, how am I doing? And what is success to you? Again, like I said about wealth, success is different for different people. Maybe someone, success to them is having 100 listeners all of a sudden, having 1,000 listeners. Maybe to them it's getting revenue from ads. And that's what success, regardless of what the impact is listenership wise. Figure out what success means to you, you know?
Yeah, it's really interesting because people listen to this, I mean, and I've said this on my show tons of times, but I said one of the motivations for me to create a show was I've always loved TV and radio, and here in Canada, I've done some of that. But by the time the producer gets involved, your original idea just sucks shit. And I don't like the non-ownership aspect to it. But one thing that I look for in interviews and podcasts, and I think people that are coming into the space need to really think about is, how are you conducting the interview if you're going to have a guest-based show? And what I see a lot of is that Q&A draw. And, I ask you a question, you give me an answer. To me, that's flat. It's so flat, right? Where I feel like only a handful of people even in the podcast game can really pull out that Oprah Winfrey style conversation where she can make anybody seem like it's just a friend she's talking to. And that's what you guys do. When you look at your show, it's just so off the cuff that you're just drawn in because you're like, this is like real entertainment that I'm getting right now. And they're seeing a lot of their favorite, artists come on the show saying things that they would never say, before, or would be very like, boom, like, we're not talking about that. For you, do you see Drink Champs as a portal to really expose other avenues of the culture? We weighed out a question to our social media for you, and we picked one of them by the flyest guy at Instagram. And he said, I would love to ask DJ EFN is, why is there no show out there strictly dedicated to pioneer DJs of the culture? And I don't know if that's a fair question, but I understand kind of where he's coming from to that.
Well, are you sure there isn't? Maybe there isn't. It hasn't, people haven't, heard of it or paid attention enough, or it caught, steam. In fact, we have some friends, shout out to Scram Jones, producer out there, big producer, and DJ Butch Rock, who's Nori's DJ. They are embarking on producing a DJ channel. Or turntable. I forget what the exact name that they decided, but they're going to start producing that, and that's dedicated to DJs. And I would just say for anybody out there, again, if you don't see it out there, create it. Go out there and do it. I mean, if you feel that that's something that you would do, but one thing, and I want to go back to another question that you asked in terms of like what the mind frame we came in for, what Drink Champs was going to be. The actual idea was to bring those same conversations that were happening backstage or in the studio, which usually revolved around some drinks too.
Yes.
And that's what we wanted to bring into the podcast world. That's what we wanted to put on, record those type of conversations where it was basically peers talking with one another, talking shop. And that's what it was. That was the idea behind it, when we first started. Let's bring those kind of conversations out into the open. And I would just, and then again, as far as the pioneers and the DJs, I just think that we're trying to do that. We can only do so much and bring so many people, but I would say if you're a content creator, and look at the landscape, see what's missing, see what you would want to, to be out there and try to create it if you can.
Because you are an artist, I mean, by the true definition of it, with music and DJing and stuff like that, what are your thoughts around mastery? Because I look at, you could take Picasso, or you could take any of these artists that, boom, they're known, but they spent a good majority of their life crafting and honing their one skill. And I admire that, because I feel like in the world, we don't talk a lot about people that did 7 things great. It's almost impossible to some degree just by sheer time. But we talk about most people who've done one thing ridiculously well, mastered it almost. For you as a DJ and artist, now kind of stepping into that media game and an interviewer, and you're a journalist. I mean, you're asking questions. I would never call myself that. I know, but I'm going to call you it because I know it's something you would never step into, but you have to admit you are into the media game, and you are asking questions. So
for sure,
by serendipitous, you call yourself a placeholder. We could call that too. how do you feel about that? Because I know you giggle at it because you're like, man, I'm a DJ. Sometimes I'm sitting there and I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing right now. Like, but this is fun and it's doing good. How have you as an artist said, all right, focused on the DJ. Now I'm kind of, focusing on other things as well. How has that been a balance for you?
I mean, I look at everything and I treat everything the same way. I try to have the same outlook I had when I decided I wanted to be involved in hip hop as a career. Because before, not many people could say this nowadays, just the way things are. Before I got into hip hop as a career, I was just a fan of the culture. I was a fan, a participant. I was in the culture, living the culture. I wasn't asking for the culture to give me anything.
Yes.
It not that it wasn't already given me by the music and by the culture itself. So once I decided to make a career of it, I said, okay, I want to treat this professionally, as professionally as I can for someone who has no professional background, who has no schooling in business. But I can learn by just seeing the things that I was reading, articles with interviews with people doing what I want to do and piecing it together and applying that. And
let me interject here on that though. Is there anybody out there that you're like, I love their interview style? I pulled a piece from that, or I learned a little bit is there anybody out there where you're like, I just love how they do it. I've learned from them and kind of made some of that my own, so to speak. Is there any inspiration for that?
Specifically to Drink Champs, no.
Okay, cool.
And I'll tell you this, to be quite honest with you, if it was a show that it was just me, just like how you're doing with me right now, I probably would look around and try to study someone more to kind of like gain certain skills. But I'm very lucky. I have a crutch, a big crutch. It's Nori.
Yes.
This legend that speaks volumes, and I don't have to pull that weight. He's there, and I can just sit there and do the organic conversation. I can just sit there and say, oh, okay, he said this. I have a thought. I have a rebuttal. I have a question, and I can do that, seamlessly because I have Nori there. Who takes on most of the weight of the show. I got to give him all that credit because he deserves it. And so I'm lucky in that way. But honestly, I wouldn't want the show to be that Q&A, that like what you've been saying, to take on this like journalistic skill or interview skill. I wouldn't enjoy it,
Yeah.
It's even hard to enjoy it sometimes now because it's become such a juggernaut. There's so much pressure on it.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of things when they're new, when they're underground, I'm one of those guys that love the artists when they're underground and be like, oh man, they're mainstream now.
Yeah. And you like that initial climb up. You like when it's just like you're throwing shit together, trying to make something, don't know what's going to be. And once, I call it the bean counters of the business people come in and try to refine it. You're like, whoa, slow it down a bit. Well,
we're very controlling of our show and how it works to the point where it's wild behind the scenes. But going back again, what I have the most fun at is bringing everything I've learned all these years with all my different endeavors and then applying it to Drink Champs. Behind the scenes and in our business structure and everything we do. That's been the funnest. And because if you think about it, we were when the internet came to play and when people started going viral, I don't know about you, but myself, I remember always scratching my head like, how does someone go viral, man? This has to be the Illuminati. This is Russian bots. Like someone's paying for this. I couldn't believe, that someone just went viral until it happened to us when we started with Drink Champs and our things started going viral. And I'm like, oh, people actually go viral. And then what follows viral is, opportunity and business ventures, and especially in media. And I was able to just like apply all these things I had learned into this juggernaut we were creating. And it was very fulfilling. It was fulfilling to be able to give back to the culture, give something that hopefully the culture looks back on and says, that was a dope era,
I think that's great. I it's interesting because when you look at virality, right? I own a marketing agency, so people say, "Hey, Ryan, what's the difference between branding and marketing?" Branding is the hello. Branding is to even get to the point of like sitting down and having a conversation. Marketing takes you through to the transaction of the actual sale.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about virality, when we push out content, we're always looking for brands because we do stuff for Ford, Toyota. We look at, okay, what is somebody going to click on? Now, if you're scrolling through your phone on Instagram and you see something overly produced, your mind is triggering that you're almost watching an ad. Yep. And the moment you think you're watching an ad, you're like, fuck that.
Yep.
But if I show you some bullshit cell phone video, you're like, whoa, what's going on here? And it triggers in your mind, maybe I should click on that and watch that. So there's definitely an art to put that out. For you guys in Drink Champs, it's interesting because I think if you look at where you guys started and where you are now, we call it thought quality versus production quality. So at the beginning of any show, in my opinion, your production quality is never going to be as it was. Episode 1 is going to look different than episode 100, right? For you, have you guys think you've put a lot more thought quality as you've, mashed out the episodes, or more production, or both?
It's a little bit of both, and also a lack of both.
That's awesome.
There's
so that's the best answer ever.
This is where the magic is, I feel, in Drink Champs. It's the yin and yang of myself and Nori. I mean, we solely control Drink Champs. We are the owners. We own it outright. We own the IP and everything. We have management that's a part of it and helps us, but it all boils down to myself and Nori. He has a different outlook. He might not care about production quality. I might care about production quality.
Yeah.
I come from marketing. I did a lot of the street team stuff back in this for the labels and the big brands, and I did that for years. Yes. And so I learned, working in it. So I worked in marketing and promotions and all that stuff. So, I'm all about rollouts and campaigns. So Drink Champs, I feel the success in what worked is the mashing of these two thoughts, where he wants to be a little bit more unorthodox in what we do, and I want to kind of be, in line. And then we find like the middle ground that works. Sometimes his wild thing that I'm like, this is crazy, works. And sometimes, and I think the consistency that I'm applying, the guaranteeing that's going to happen, the branding, the logo, the look, that is working as well. So those two things work together to make
that. That's the DJ in you, though. You're counting those beats. You're like, am I dropping it on the one?
Right.
Or
right.
you're a beat maker.
I'm Nori's DJ in this whole thing. I'm the one.
You are all about synchronicity. You're like, no. Like, this has to flow, man. Like, pun intended, right?
Yeah. So we call ourselves the podcast version of Eric B and Rakim.
Yeah. No, that's a great comparison. I like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. What would you say to people? See, and this, I mean, even in business or, culture, whatever you want to call it, relationships are extremely important to cultivate. You know that. What do you say to people that say, look, I'm getting into the media game, or I started a show and I want to have XYZ celebrity on my show? How does somebody that, let's just say that they have no celebrity, barely following, how does that person give upfront value and leverage something to somebody who's already up there, so that somebody that up there says, you know what, I'm gonna give this person a shot, instead of doing I call it the 60-year-old dude move, like, can I get this now? Like, I'd love for you to be on my show. It's like, don't do that. Right. Don't do that. What would you say to somebody that says, I'm just trying to create relationships and try to approach the situation with as much value as I possibly can? Because I feel like people that are at the top, they still have certain needs and problems that they are looking for solutions all the time. How does somebody identify those?
Well, that's a loaded question that you gave me.
I asked 6-part questions, man. I'm sorry.
I'm still analyzing everything you asked me, but in a nutshell, I think what you're asking me, I would say that, first of all, you make sure that if you want these celebrities or anybody that's already, in a sense, they're going to bring more value than you have to offer, make sure that your content looks good. It's I'm saying that, at the very least, that it looks good. You know what I'm saying?
Don't come up broke down. Don't do that. Don't make broke down content.
Your approach is polite and I'm big on this thing that I call polite persistence.
Ooh, I like that.
Where
those are two good words.
There's nothing wrong with cold calling people or approaching people, but just be polite. and be persistent, and then be persistent until they say no. If they say no, or if they block you, then that's it. It's a wrap, and you don't take it personal.
Yes,
because it's never personal.
But let's talk about this though. There's persistence, then there's creepy, then there's stalker, then there's weird and not good. The polite and you're part done. Of it. Yeah, but there's polite weirdos out there, man. You know that. Like the person that, hey man, what's going on? You're like, whoa, that went sideways quick.
Right. You know what it is though? Oftentimes people aren't looking at themselves from the outside. Like, look at yourself from the outside and make sure you seem like someone wants to talk to you. Like, someone will hit me up and be like, yo man, I really want you on my podcast, bro. And I look on their shit and they got like skulls and Illuminati and conspiracy theories, and their images look crazy, and they, it's like, let's be honest with each other. Like, look, like if I'm gonna step to Oprah, I gotta be like, if Oprah looks at Drink Champs, make some noise, and she's not gonna fuck with me, bro. Like, be honest with yourself, man. Like, what do you have to offer on first glance,
But here's where I'm asking this question, because this is what I find so interesting, especially, and this now being like the interview media journalism blah 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 game. It's a relationship. It's a push and pull effect, right? I give the analogy of marriage, right? If I was to go on, like I'm married, when I went on the first date with my wife, if I was to sit down and say, honey, we're gonna have 2 children. We want rental properties, revenue streams, businesses, and all this. Like, you're fucking creepy, bro. Like, I'm never, like, don't call me again. Right. But it's an organic thing. Go on a date, build some rapport, go on another date, build some rapport. I like to it's funny, in our show, we're very unique. So people will say, hey, Ryan, you got some amazing talent, guests on, blah, blah, blah. How do you do it? And I like to ask the person in the interview. So, for example, I found you through, I think it was Sean Prez. Sean Prez, he does the Move Makers. I think he was a Bad Boy exec or something like that.
I used to work for him doing marketing for Bad Boy.
And all of a sudden he was, I think he was doing something, and I seen you and I'm like, oh, this is great. And that's how I got, I followed you, probably a year ago, man. Like, I don't even know how long I've been seeing your content roll down. Right. And I thought in the back of my head, I gotta have that guy in the show, but now's not the time. Right? It's that situational, emotional intelligence that people don't tend to have. But I looked at everything you did and I said, well, I got to hit you up. And so for me, I just feel like sending a text is boring. So I got to get the voice message, right? Because I think how people can sell themselves is, why would DJ EFN want to talk to this guy for 30 to 60 minutes? Well, show him through your voice, give him some sort of vibe. And to me, that's been a big winner for us. So I tell people all the time, flip your phone around, man, and send a video, audio invite. You'd be surprised how that kind of...
I have to say something, though, to be careful giving that advice, because remember what I said. Make sure your shit looks good, at least. Yeah. Yes. Because I'm scared clicking on voice memos when they come in my DMs.
Oh, you are, eh?
What to expect. I don't know if this, hey, what's up, fan man? I don't know what the hell I'm about to hear, And I don't want to hear it. I can't unhear it at that point. So you just never know. That's something. At least a text, you can start to read it and this is crazy.
Yeah.
But the voice, I don't know. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look. Okay, who is this person? Who has the audacity to send me a voice memo? And I go and I look and I'm like, oh, this guy seems like a positive dude. See, that's the other thing too, man. Like, that's why I say polite, persistence.
Yes.
It's all about, like, you got to kind of like your positivity has to shine through in your messages.
Yes.
Because, man, there's just so much negativity out there that people just don't want to entertain that at all.
But look what you just said. Who has the audacity, you audacious bastard, for sending me a voice memo? But it got your attention. So, but then you're like, whoa, before I open this up and cause myself mental issues, because it could be something really bad, let's go check who the person is. And then you're like, wait a second, seems legit. But when you get back to that voice message, if it's like respectful and good, Come on, it's got
Right,
impact.
And all jokes aside, the real reason why I don't like to listen to voicemails is because often I'm around my family and I don't know what the voice, what they're gonna be saying, you know?
Yeah.
So if it was me here in the office in the studio, I'll listen to whatever, you know what I'm saying? But that's usually the reason why. So when I'll look, in your case, I looked, oh, this guy seems like a pretty positive dude. And then, then I checked it out, without worried about what you might say.
Yeah, man, you got back. I mean, it's an interesting, it is a push and pull. With Drink Champs.
And real quick, sorry, you said another thing too about, I forget how you worded the something intelligence. What was it that you said?
It's the emotional intelligence, kind of coming into how the hell, like, it is emotional intelligence. I mean, that's the reality.
Would you call that gut feeling?
I would call that a gut feeling. I mean, 100%. I would also call it, to be honest with you, I'd mix the gut feeling on one deck with the other deck that's got empathy, meaning don't be an egotistical bastard. Figure out who the hell you're going after and figure out what their vibe is.
Right.
People nowadays, it's like they lack basic respect and regard, so to speak.
For sure.
So it's like, could you not roll through the guy's feed for like 30 seconds, try to figure out what his vibe is? People tell you who they are way before they even show up half the time, if you're willing to listen. So that's what I meant about the emotional intelligence.
Because I'm big on timing, on the feel.
Huge.
I'm big on making sure you don't. I'm big on a sense of urgency for sure, but I also am big on timing, on something feeling right, and yeah, everything you're saying makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. What do you think about the cross-pollination of, you're seeing, I want to get your opinion on this. I think about it all the time. From the corporate perspective, hip hop is such a massive revenue generator. And that's not even just the music. It's the clothing, the swag, the finesse, man. Okay. Now, where that money is going, a lot of the time, is not really back into the culture, so to speak. Right? I shouldn't use the word fault, for lack of better words. Who's responsible for that? The creators of the culture? I'm asking you this because I watched something you said. I don't know if it's when you did that video where you went over to the Colombia or something like that.
The documentary
you're talking,
series?
Yeah. And you said, look, guys, people internationally are starting to look at the hip hop culture in North America is not the best anymore because of where it's going. And you said, we need to kind of rebirth and show that, hey, we're still keeping to those roots and not veering off too much. And I found it fascinating because to me, that shows that you're extremely insightful. So that's kind of the premise of the question is, what do you think is the issue and where do you think we need to put the solution on that?
There's a lot of issues that we just too many to unpack, but some of them, when it comes specifically to hip hop, I like to, put blame a lot on the generation, my generation, in the sense that like the artists that were coming up in the mid to late 90s, that's when the industry was making so much money. Oops, I want to make sure my computer doesn't die on you.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
So I feel that it was the blame goes on both sides. The industry, the way it was set up from the beginning. I mean, if you want to go back into the history of the music industry, it's the mafia and everything. Like, come on, guys. Like, dive into the history of the music industry, and we'll already start to see where the problems are. And then the corporate America is the same as the mafia in terms of how they take advantage of things. So, and then these young artists coming from nothing, starting to see some kind of real money. They were just like, I call it where they never wanted to be OGs. They wanted to be YGs for the rest of their life. So they just like, they didn't intend on, first of all, fixing the issue because they were making a lot of money and passing on knowledge to the next generation. So the next generation, was kind of lost in a sense. So that to me was a part of the problem. And then you have the crash of the industry and artists didn't know what they were doing, like what to do at that point. And it's just, there's just so many deep rooted issues. And I mean, it boils down to, capitalism and corporate structures and this, that, and the other. But ultimately, I think now we see the value in the culture. from the culture standpoint. We're seeing the wrongs that have been done because they're evident. And I think the culture is starting to finally, you know, take ownership for some of these issues and find ways and interesting and unique ways using the technologies that are available, the new economic landscape with crypto and all this NFTs on, and we're trying to figure out ways to repair. I don't know if we'll be able to repair all these problems that we have, but we're trying to find ways to repair and put back the power and the onus on artists and artistry and culture and and history, because that's the other thing that we can't lose, the history of the culture, which is vital. And that's what I meant when I travel overseas. They still love, you know, they're still idolizing like a certain school of hip hop, you know, because it got later to them. And they're living in a lot of times in a lot of these countries, they're impoverished countries. So they're kind of like how hip hop was when it started from nothing. And all they care about is making dope music. So they look at us as just money hungry people that don't care about art. We just care about cash.
Yep. Economics.
So they're like, so they've told us time and time again without us asking, you guys no longer do hip hop. You do business.
Yeah.
And we just got to understand that for what it is.
Yeah,
I don't know if I answered your question. Sorry. I don't know if
No, you did. It was a 6-part question, so you have to tell me a short story in return to the 6-part question. But what I was gonna say, that was such a good answer. I think I lost track of thought there for a second.
I lose track in the middle of my answer. My girl laughs at me all the time. She goes, "There you go."
I think I had 6 questions in response to your answer. But what would you say to people who are, you know, as an artist, it's so interesting. I always say, like, a starving artist wasn't broke because their art necessarily wasn't good. It's because nobody knew about it. So there has to be this line of artistry that, hey, if you're good at something, great, but you at some point in your career as an artist, you're gonna have to, you know, you're gonna have to monetize it. You're gonna have to bring in economics, because, you know, you got a family to feed and you need to live life. What would you say to artists out there that are, like, for example, I'll get somebody hit me up. Yo, Ryan, how do I get a podcast going, man? The specs. Oh my God, what kind of camera do I got to get? They're so entrenched in the art or in the tech behind it. I'm like, okay, great. But what you need to really be thinking of is, how are you going to get people to listen to it? How the fuck are you going to market it?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? I don't care if you film your first episode on an iPhone. It's doable.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. You need to start thinking about how you're going to, like, wrap a business around it. And when you talk to an artist, they're like, yo, bro, I don't want any of that. I just want to paint, man. What do you say to somebody that says, hey, I just want to paint. I hope somebody discovers me.
You're amazing with your 6-part questions, and your shit's like fucking algebra, bro. Like,
listen, we had. Have you heard of that show Shark Tank before?
Yeah, of course.
So we've had Kevin O'Leary on the show, and you know, he said, everybody says the same thing, like, all guests. I need to start clipping the audio because everybody's like, holy crap, man, you asked 6 questions in one. It's a thing, man. I can't stop it though.
Yeah. Let me see. So, okay. Again, I don't know if I'm going to answer the question the way you laid it out in your algebraic form, but one of the things that I think people use a lot is they always want to point to the things they need, like the tech behind things, as almost as an excuse as to why something wouldn't work. Like, they're already creating a problem or creating a reason why something they're doing isn't working by saying, well, I don't have a team. I don't have the cameras. I don't have the equipment. And I would tell artists this is probably the best time to be an artist than ever before. 100%. And to be a pure artist, to be the artist that you want to be, because the tools that are available for free for artists to create and to put out their stuff and to let it find an audience that likes whatever you're doing, it's never been like that in the past.
Never.
There was gatekeepers, there was distribution, there was expensive studio time, everything was expensive, you know. And so I would say to people, listen, stop putting these roadblocks in your way. Stop thinking you need all these things. You don't. If you have one phone, if you don't have a fucking phone, your friend has a phone. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're that broke that you don't have a phone, hey, you're still not in a bad place because someone around you has a phone that'll film you. Like, there's no excuse not to get started. There's no excuse to not do the things that you want to do the way you want to do them. Stop saying you have to do a radio record. That excuse should not exist anymore, because the radio isn't as important as it was before. You know, you don't have to do the club banger. Like, no, man, there's artists that are making millions doing nothing but underground, you know, dark music, because they found their audience, and the internet is there to find these people, you know, and it really just takes you making the effort to do these things, create these things, and you taking the time, and again, going back to consistency, going out there, being consistent, allowing yourself the time for these things to develop and for them to find an audience, because it may take one guy or one girl a week to find an audience, and it might take you 10 years. It just depends on how much you really want to do this. But there's no excuse not to be, like, this is the best time in the history of, I think, art, for people to just do it.
And they're being compensated. You know, I think back to the simplest form. You know, back in the day, you know, culture families, especially, it doesn't matter where you come from, but people have immigrated over to said country. Their parents said, yo, man, be an engineer, get education, lawyer, accountant, doctor. And now you have these corporations that say, oh, you know how to video edit? I'm going to pay you $200,000 a year. You know how to chop up videos for Instagram? I'm going to pay you $175,000 a year to start. That's art, you know? And people are looking for those kind of people in droves. I mean, in my last couple questions here, but the one question I have for you is, you know, what drives you? Like, what really motivates you in life? What is the driver? And not, I know, you know, kids and all that, but like, is there anything down that just, man, that little voice just keeps kicking your ass every day and you keep getting up and just getting after it? What drives you?
I mean, I think that the appreciation, or better said, you know, just not taking things for granted really drives me, because, you know, I just feel like, you know, I feel very lucky to have been able to do certain things, doing them from a place of where I know that I come from, and you know, very little resources, very little connection, and to be able to like, I'm trying to like answer this correctly, because it's like I appreciate that I actually even have a drive. Not everybody has a drive. And I appreciate whatever DNA, whatever my mom did, and even my dad from a distance, because he was an entrepreneur himself, and he's a war veteran, and even from a distance, I admired him and appreciated him and found strength, because when I was really young and I was going through hard times, I would say, shit, man, my dad was in the Vietnam War fighting. Like, who am I to complain about some dumb shit right now? You know, my parents, you know, ran from communism in Cuba and had to relocate, different language, different culture. Who am I to complain right now? So I just I drive from all those things, and I'm grateful that I have a drive, like I said, and I don't take anything for granted. And I always want to give back to the things that have inspired me. So that's a big driving force. So I look at everything that's inspired me, from my family culture to music and hip hop culture, to the pioneers that I looked up to growing up, to my friends who have been supportive. It's like, I feel like I owe all of that to do right by it, you know, by them and by it.
That's amazing. The perspective that you have, though, like, your mindset is on point, man. I mean, it's just such a great positive mindset. Even in your interviews, though, when people bring up or try to ask you like bait questions or something like, what do you think about XYZ and this XYZ? You're like, I don't really want to talk about the problem. Let's start talking a lot more about the solution. Like, you don't put your nose in all these little problems. You're like, I don't want to hear that right now. Like, you're like a Cuban guy through to you. Like, let's get back, man, to the positivity here. Like, you know, and I respect that about you. What would you say? I want to ask you a vulnerable question, though, because I think about hip hop culture all the time. You talk to some guys and they're like, yo, man, you know, they're trying to be cool. And then some people are just cool, you know, and they're tough, and they're really tough. But I'm like, is there anybody you've interviewed, because I know you're a fan of the culture and hip hop, that you're like, I'm a little nervous here. like this is some presence coming on the show. Like I need to like 10-2 on this one. You know, is there anybody that made you just like, damn, wow, I'm sitting across or in the same room as this person?
I mean, I've said that a lot of times, but I rarely get nervous.
Yes.
But the person that I was actually nervous with, and it was my favorite. He's still one of my favorite artists, you know, overall of all music, but of hip hop specifically and MCing and all that is Ice Cube.
Ooh,
you know, huge Ice Cube fan. He was my favorite artist growing up. I have so much respect and admiration for everything he's done in his career and continues to do. And just, you know, his presence is kind of like, you know, you got to respect this dude. You know what I'm saying? Like he commands respect.
Yeah.
So I was nervous as a fan and as because, you know, it's Ice Cube and we didn't get much time with him, which I hope to have him on. Like, I don't see that as an official Drink Champs that we did with him. He was on a press run for a movie. We were in Atlanta and he had his publicist and they kind of wrapped it pretty quick. So I hope to have him back on, but that was, even Nori noticed. He's like, damn, I never noticed you nervous. I was actually really, really nervous.
Damn. But you know, when they say, hey, if you met somebody you admired as a kid or like a hero, the worst thing you want to happen is like be disappointed that they were like, you know, an asshole or something. But I think you said, hey, you really enjoyed the time with him.
Oh, no, it was dope. It was dope. And he was everything I expected him to be, you know, and
let me ask you this too, because you say this, and I notice other interviewers don't pick up on it a lot with you. You always make mention. You're like, Pitbull came. I was so shocked. The guy just showed up, just him. You know, just walked in. You know, and you make mention when people are like, you're shocked that they didn't even come with this entourage. They just kind of rolled up. Is that because you admire like the humility? Is it just something that you're like, wow, like some people are at, you know, a level and their ego is still not even like they're super chill about it. You bring that up a lot.
I mean, there's different reasons why I think I admire it or I'm surprised by it, because I wouldn't be mad at someone coming to Drink Champs where, I mean, if you watch Drink Champs, you see it's a bunch of dudes, everybody's drinking, smoking, it gets kind of rowdy, you know, Nori's a street dude, you know, like, you know, if you know me, my crew from Miami, you know, people would say that, they might say that we're street dudes, like, So, you know, I'm not mad if someone says, well, let me bring a little entourage.
just a little security.
To balance that out, you know, just to balance it out, you know, just for a little, you know, emotional security. So sometimes it's just surprising. And sometimes it is, it's the humility that they just, you know, that they come dolo, that they feel good enough to, you know, just be by themselves. And I mean, Pitt, he knows, I've known Pitt since he was a kid and he's known Nori. So, you know, but Pitt, I think he just rolls that way, you know, especially in his own city of Miami. You know, he might not roll like that in another city. He probably will, but yeah, it is surprising, and it is something that's like, oh damn, this person came.
That interview though,
Kanye came dolo. He came with
really.
He came with one other person. Yeah, Larry Hoover's son.
Wow, just like that, eh? Sheesh. He seems like an interesting. I mean, you know it. You obviously talked to him. He seems like an interesting character. I don't know. There's something cool about him though. At the same time, so last question. What is something? What do you prioritize in your life? Entertainment, education, or information? Scale of 1 to 3. How would you knock those content pillars, or those what we take in as human beings as importance for you? Education, entertainment, information.
I would almost couple information and education as one thing to me.
Well, I'll go back on you on that. Information, education, the biggest difference for me is if you're educating me, you're giving me some knowledge. But if you're just telling me some bullshit noise, that's information. Doesn't mean it's good information. Just means you're trying to tell me some noise.
So you then by that definition, I would say education, entertainment, information.
Okay. I like that. Damn.
But I like to be informed in the sense that I like to be educated on real things happening in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good. That's good.
And I like perspectives as well. I might not agree with someone's perspective of the information, the way that they're giving it, but I love to know all the different perspectives.
That's a good point you made, because I think about it all the time. I'm like, where did we get to as a human race where you know, having a conversation with somebody, for me, I've always had this enriched in like my DNA. I don't have to agree with you. nor do I want to agree with you, or I don't want you to agree with me. But why can't you have like opposing perspectives and still be civil about it? Like, why can't you have friends and you're like, yo, we banter back and forth all the time. You know, we don't agree on everything, but we're still homies, man. You know, but a lot of people nowadays, they're, oh, you don't agree with me? It's over. Like marriage. There's like a high divorce rate. Oh, you don't agree? Something happened? Like gone.
Right.
I don't understand that. Like, do you think that like it's crazy to me?
No, it's terrible. And I talk to people all the time that they won't hang out with people with opposing views. And I pride myself on the fact that like I have my crew are people from all different backgrounds and ethnicities and nationalities and people with opposing political views, and we get into huge arguments, but at the end of the day, we're friends, we're brothers, and that is way more important than any of our views. In fact, I love the engagement because maybe I'll learn something. Maybe they'll convince me of something I otherwise wasn't agreeing with. And I'm down for that. And I think it's important that we understand opposing views and we understand perspectives and we understand history. A lot of people don't take history into account, into why things are. They just think why this needs to change or this shouldn't be because right now whatever's happening is wrong. Okay, but it's wrong, but maybe there's a historical reason why this is wrong that hasn't been fixed. And is the reason why A, B, and C is happening. Let's look at history. Through that perspective, we might find the answer.
They who do not take time to study their history are blessed with the fate of repeating it. Fuckhead. No, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you're gonna, like, the fate is there. I'm a big energy person, man. Like, to the point where karma, like, I don't say certain things. Like, I don't talk about car accidents. Like, my son, were in the truck the other day and he's, Dad, you know, what if we go off the cliff? I stopped, man. Like, I literally I'm like, Dejan, don't say that. He's like, Dad, what? He's like, it was like a dream. I didn't mean anything. I'm like, what you speak into the universe sometimes can happen. Right, like, I'm so paranoid that way.
Yeah, I tell my girl's always watching like crazy like murder shit and like things that happen to kids. And I get so mad at her. I'm like, you need to stop that right now.
Isn't that interesting though? Once you become a parent, man, anything child related, like it just hits you different. And you notice certain things when you're out and about, like somebody walks through a door of a store with a stroller, hold the door. Somebody like, what kind of car seat is that? How did they put, like, you notice these little nuances when you become a parent, right?
Yeah, last question. Want, like a creepy person to walk by them. You're like, hey, watch out.
It's true, man. It's true. I taught my son too. It's so funny. I put him in his car seat and I always teach him, because my back is in the vehicle. And I'm very big on, not that I've done anything bad, but the world's a weird place. Right. So when my back is turned to everything, I'm like, well, I got no eyes in the back of my head. So my son will literally always look over my shoulder. And I said, tell me if anybody's coming up behind daddy, you know, because for me, it's two things. Number one, I like to be very aware of my surroundings, but number two, it teaches him to understand his surroundings without me just saying it. You know what I mean? And it's a very interesting concept that way. Last question, man. What can I do for you?
Nothing, man. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep being positive and keep spreading that positivity. You know, people might think that I'm like this uber positive person. It's not the case. It's just that there's so much negativity out there that, you know, we need to all be proactive in positivity. And it may not be easy, but let's continue to push positivity. Let's try to find solutions. Let's you know, support people that I'm not gonna say deserve it, but you know, just whatever you're into. If you see someone doing something positive, support it. You know what I'm saying? Like don't need something back. Just support people. And trust me, like you said, the karma and all that stuff. I believe in all that stuff, man. It all comes back, man.